Robinson.
Yep.
Could you introduce yourself and say a little bit about yourself?
My name's Tommy Robinson. I'm very short. A little overweight. Tommy Robinson, I'm from Luton. I founded the English Defence League in 2009. That's what everyone knows me as Tommy Robinson for. We formed to counter what we see as a growing threat of Islamisation, radical Islam, terrorist groups, extremism, that we feel wasn't being tackled. And I subsequently left the English Defence League over 2 years ago. And I'm still trying to find ways to further bring about the debate.
So what do you think the EDL achieved in that period when you were involved with it?
I think that 5 years ago, 6 years ago now, most people were still whispering when they talk about Islam. And that's reality. I've had it before where people would say, yeah, and Muslims. And it's like, why are you whispering that? And political correctness had become so powerful that people felt they couldn't even talk about it. And there's a reason for that. If you look at what we've gone through just to bring about the debate, the way we've been slandered, sneered, attacked, violently attacked, terrorists want to kill us, they're the consequences of bringing about this debate. But it had to be brought about. I think when you say about what have they achieved, most things, like we know that what we call in this country is the grooming scandal, which is really a sort of rape jihad that's gone on across Britain. When you look at that, if you look at the arrest rate and the investigations, it was only after the formation of the English Defence League that these arrests come about. They'd been ignored for 20 years. So I feel that it brought things to the forefront. It made it impossible to ignore these things. It made the country aware, the politicians aware. I think that the way we went about it, the way we've done it is questionable. Certainly at times.
In what way would you say it's questionable?
In the way, look, taking to the streets in the manner that we did, there's a lot of anger, there's a lot of frustration. Mixing that with alcohol and demonstrations, not a good combination. Very difficult to control, not just for the police, but for ourselves. You have a underclass in Britain that have been ignored, that are angry. You've had all these years and years of tensions and things building up and growing up, and then all of a sudden there was an outlet for it. And we wasn't ready. It wasn't planned. The English Defence League was not planned. There was no plan to it.
Yeah, just suddenly.
Just boom.
Yeah.
And within 6 months, one week I'm on the building site, and then within 6 months I'm leading the biggest street protest movement Britain's seen, Europe.
Yeah. How did that feel? Did you know? 'Cause some people might let their egos carry away with them slightly.
I think mine did at times as well. I think I got carried away with a moment many times. Surrounded by people who tell me my shit didn't smell. Everything I'm doing is great.
Yeah.
When at times I look at more from a personal aspect more than what I was doing. It sort of like took over my life. I become unrecognisable at times to who I was before that. In the way of probably in the way just the neglect I was showing the family. The fact I was drinking alcohol, I was regularly, I was even participating in taking drugs regularly at times. That's not who I was. When I was 25, 26, but before the English Defence League. So it's sort of like, and I look at a way that I guess the pressure, at the time I thought I was dealing with the pressure, the death threats, the terrorist threats, the police persecution which comes straight away, the pressure put on my family, I thought I was dealing with it. It's only looking back, I can see that I wasn't.
Yeah.
I thought I could handle it and I couldn't.
Did you come, I'm not saying you had a mental breakdown, right? Did you come close to veering towards that sort of thing? Were there like days when you thought, I just don't want to do this? And you
No, never not want to do this. I suppose I explain it like walking around with terminal illness.
Yeah.
And that's how I felt at times.
Really?
And because I felt I'm going to get killed. I still feel it anyway.
Yeah.
But I felt I'm going to get killed for this. And if I'm going to get killed, I'm going to go out with a bang.
Yeah.
That's where I was at for a couple of years.
Yeah.
That's where I was at. So
you were a lightning conductor in your viewpoint that there was this whole underground swelling and then you just stood up
and bang. It all just come
to you.
flowing out. And I mean, when you say everything come to me, I had sit-downs with families. Some of the meetings I've had, man, and listen to the stories of what's happening to their daughters. Some men, the Jewish. I felt like everyone then was coming to me with their problems. Speaking to dads on the phone in Blackpool, they've got like this one incident. They've got his daughter. Yeah, there's a young Muslim and the Muslim's dad. They've got the man's daughter. They're on the phone to the man's daughter, telling him what they're doing to his daughter. It's just like things that people would think, what? Things that sound unbelievable. Only until the Rotherham report come out did people sit back and think, what?
But do you think that's a facet of Islam rather than a facet of just criminality.
No, I think that we should look. 90% of street level gang grooming convictions, where an incident like that, where a father thinks he can sit with his son and rape a non-Muslim girl, these cases were unique. They are men who work together, sharing young girls with their work colleagues, not strangers they're finding on the internet with perverted ideas. They're brothers, they're cousins. A taxi driver driving a girl home rings his two cousins and his uncle, his wife's brother, rings his wife's brother. Come and rape this girl. This is a whole different mindset that we haven't seen before. And it's like we should be looking at why 90% of those convictions are Muslim. We should be looking at why 20% of them are called Muhammad. That is an avenue we should be looking at. And when we have the development of ISIS and...
Just can I stop you a second?
Yeah.
So you obviously must have looked into this a bit yourself, why they're called Muhammad.
I worked on it for 2 years.
So what was your conclusion?
Conclusion was that it is sanctioned within Islam when at war, but only when at war. Yeah? But that's the only place the argument can come, is if we're at war or not. When at war, it is legitimate to take non-Muslim women as sexual slaves. It actually sanctions it 14 times in the Quran. Muhammad did it. When you read the biography of Muhammad, he did it. He walked past one of his soldiers and he said, "Have you derobed her yet? Give her here." That was a slave. He took another girl who he beheaded her husband and her son and her husband, and he took her that night as a sexual. So when we see that, when you start reading the scripture, trying to understand the mindset of what these men are behaving and acting like, it's not when you look at the Rochdale grooming case, the Labour councillor went to court and gave a character reference for the Muslim groomers. The ex-Muslim mayor of Bolton, the mayor, went to give a character reference. These men were not driven out of their communities. They were not called. There was no call for them to resign from the Labour Party. There was sort of like a whole different way of looking at things.
But you think there's, you mentioned the concept of war, rape is allowable during war, and that's what we interviewed Anjan Chowdhury, and he defended ISIS under them, them same rules. Do you actually think these people within the UK consider themselves at war with the wider...
Al-Dawh Harab is the house of God, and Al-Dawh Islam is the house of God, and Al-Dawh Harab is the house of war. And until this country becomes Islamic, it's viewed by many Muslims as a house of war. Many. I'm not saying every Muslim thinks that. I'm not saying... No, the majority of course are not. But when we look at Rotherham, a population of, I think, 3,500 Muslim males aged between 16 and 40, and 1,400 kids raped.
But how many? What was it? Because I don't know the figures of the core people who was doing it. Was it like 200?
Well, no. If you, that's still a big percentage out of that population. If you look at I done it before. We worked on a 2-year thing called Easy Meet, where we were working all these things out from interviews with the girls. One girl said she was raped by 20 men in a night, and this girl said. And then when you actually start looking at how many Muslim men there are of that age, it's like, this is big. Yeah. This is very, very big, and how many are doing it. And how accepted it is. The biggest thing is how accepted it is, because if one of your colleagues, or one of my colleagues, said, "I've got this 12-year-old Muslim girl, you want to rape her?"
Yeah, well, no.
Well, you're going to get filled in, and it's certainly going to have been reported. Yeah. Not once, not one time. In fact, the imams were asked by Ann Cryer in Keighley to address the issue, and they refused to. And not one time was it reported by any mosque, any Muslim, anywhere. In the epidemic size of the problem.
Do you think that's, like say the mafia or something, where, a group of people do know each other and they're all related, and, if you're the one who goes snitching, you're the one who's going to...
Well, we have a problem then, don't we?
Yeah, well, but is that a problem with religion or more a problem with...
Well, I think look, when ISIS come out, and Boko Haram, when Boko Haram took those 200 Nigerian slave girls, he made a video and he said, "Allah commands us to do this." And he quoted where Allah commands him to do it. And ISIS, exactly the same. ISIS have openly stated it is with their religious right to do what they're doing. Sure. So it's not for me to make the decision, is it religiously motivated, is it Islam? But it is for the sake that we should have had a public inquiry by now on this issue.
We find out whether it is Islam or just...
Public inquiry, let's do it. Yeah. We had a public inquiry because a couple of people's phones got hacked. 1,400 kids in one town raped. And it's not, you haven't addressed the issue. It's still going on now. It's still what you've done is you've admitted and accepted that there was a problem and that you failed to address it properly. But let's face it, that's happening across this whole country. And that number of 1,400 girls would probably go into the hundreds of thousands of girls that are victims. And remember, all those girls have got families. So the amount of people who are feeling this, it happened to our cousin in Luton.
Okay.
Groomed, raped, sexually abused.
Well, it's like you say, it's a stone in a puddle, ripples.
Boom, yeah.
So what do you think the future of Islam in the UK is then?
I think it's a very difficult future for all of us. I think that for Islam in the UK, look, if we look historically, it hasn't really integrated anywhere that it's gone, it's dominated. That's historically proven. I think 44 countries have turned to civil conflict due to the reasons, but Muslims need to, when they come to the UK, it's for us to do and for them to do. We need to enforce who we are, our culture, our beliefs, our way of life. Adapt to it, assimilate to it. If you want Sharia law, go to a country that is governed by Sharia law. Many of your their fathers have come here to escape it. Many of these people who are on the street corner calling for Sharia law have never even stepped into a country that's governed by it. They enjoy our freedoms, they enjoy our tax, they enjoy our benefits, whilst calling for the overthrow of our queen and country.
But that kind of one of the points I wanted to raise is, do you not think this, obviously the rape stuff, that's go to jail, throw the key away, but a lot of the sort of street corner Islamists, it's like a phase almost, but there's something there that can latch onto. So what quite interests me is that how you combat that.
I don't think
moderate imams or
no, you don't. No, because that doesn't work. We've seen that the government's response was to send hundreds and hundreds of imams into British prisons to de-radicalise, and what it actually did was add more conversions, more radicalisation. Can we rely on Muslims to solve the extremist problem? I think the combined army surrounding ISIS of Islamic countries' military force is 5 million. We've got predicted 100,000 ISIS fighters.
Yeah, probably something like that.
And the 5 million can't go in and solve that?
It's political.
Well,
I would argue that it's going to overturn a lot of stones if Saudi Arabia suddenly which they probably wouldn't, went shooting into Syria, because then you'd have.
Well, Saudi Arabia won't, will they? What they'll do is they'll arm everyone. They'll arm Al Qaeda.
If the Iranians are fighting ISIS.
Yeah.
So
that's Shia.
Yeah. So Shia.
That's what most of it comes down to. Most of the bordering lines and the lines are drawn between it is religious conflict.
Because there isn't it, as you probably well know, that Wahhabism is a very, very, shall we say, different interpretation of Islam, a very fundamentalist interpretation, where there are other interpretations of Islam that are not perhaps.
Wahhabism is purified. Literally, we're taking this literally as it is, and it's growing, it's funded, it's organised, it's orchestrated. The mosques that are being in this country are funded within it. Saudi Arabia, we shouldn't have foreign funding for any religious institution in Britain. We shouldn't be letting them fund schools in Britain. All of these things they're only going to go a little way to solving the problem, but we're not even doing that. We're not even preventing really anything. Look at the prison system. What are we doing about it? Well, it's unbelievable. I've been in there 3 times in the last couple of years.
And how was it for you?
It's unbelievable. You would not believe it.
It must be because, you obviously with the profile you have, there must have been a few people that were perhaps.
Yeah, of course I was the biggest target there.
Yeah. And how did you cope with that? Psychologically more than.
Psychologically, so I look at I leave the English Defence League, and to be honest, whilst I've been leading the English, when I was leading the English Defence League and walking around this town, I have to be in a certain mode. Yeah. So when I go out of my house to when I'm if I'm in a different town, I'm in a different mode. I have to be ready, and I have to be ready to defend myself. And I've been in that mindset the whole way through leading the English Defence League, of the mindset that I'm not going to run away from you, all right? It's not going to happen. I'm not going to back down. So that mindset, I leave the English Defence League and I start looking and thinking I need to I need to try and change my way a bit, for my family, for this. And then I'm landed in prison again. And I'm not just put in prison, but I say I'm going to get killed here. Yeah, people know I'm going to get killed. And there has to be no other agenda other than the fact that they wanted me killed, than the fact that I'm walked onto a wing full of Muslims.
So you think you were deliberately placed there?
I know I was deliberately placed there, yeah. Each time I was locked in a room with Muslims. I lost my teeth. I was locked in. I had my head glued up. In the next one, I said I had my teeth all chipped. I had black eye. There's no other reason that could have happened.
But isn't this incredibly terrifying for you that the British state has got a big target on your head?
Well, essentially, I've been declared an enemy of the state.
Yeah, but here you are talking to me.
Yeah.
So do you think they kind of let you talk a bit, and are they trying?
No, I don't.
Are they trying to control you?
I think that they have tried to control me. I think that many times across these years, there'd have been people sitting in rooms thinking, he's still going. The hell is he still going? And when you say are they trying to control me, it's I was.
Yeah, direct you in.
They were.
Yeah.
No, I went to. I went to prison. I had the incident in Wood Hill where I was violently attacked. I then ended up in Winchester. I was then approached by a secretive unit within Scotland Yard called Met Intelligence Bureau, who, when they approached me, they asked me, what are your plans when you leave custody? What are you going to be doing?
Yeah.
And at that moment in my
Was
life,
there any implication that you better go back and just go back to a very normal life?
no, they didn't want that.
Oh, okay.
No, they really didn't want that.
And what did they really want?
They wanted me back involved.
Okay.
Yeah.
But, so you're involved now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm not involved now. No,
Yeah.
they wanted me cozying up with Paul Golding.
Okay.
That Britain First was what they wanted.
That's why they wanted you to.
They wanted Britain First was causing them problems. They wanted to know where his finances were coming from, links in Northern Ireland. They had a whole list of things.
To spy, basically.
To spy and to sort of his words. His name was Ollie. Is if there was a terrorist reaction, then they've got control of the reaction to it. If there's a terrorist attack, then but it was all sold to me in the way that you'll be doing your country a service because you are opposed. Because I've left because of the far right. You're opposed to these people that we need to tackle. Yeah? But for me at that moment in my life, it wouldn't have mattered anything because when I'm sitting in that prison cell and I know what's gone on, my mum was very ill, my wife, my 3 young kids. I had no intentions of talking about Islam again. Yeah? I did at that moment in my life. Yeah. I'm like. And I actually said to them, I said, listen, when I get out of here, I'm going back to work. And they said to me, well, where do you see yourself in a few years? And I was cockily said, I'll be a millionaire in a few years through work. And I was, but you know what they done? The biggest mistake I ever made was telling them what I'm going to do when I get out. Because I told them when I get out, I'm selling the properties I owned, because I had 7 properties. Yeah. I'm selling the properties I own, I'm buying a plot of land, I'm developing, I'm back at work. Yeah. I told them this, I come out of custody and they kept me on the restraint. So I couldn't work. I've been on an order that I haven't been able to work for 5 years. So how do they do that?
How are you supporting yourself?
Well, I was supporting myself through my mum remortgaged. Yeah. So I had £44,000 in the bank when I was originally arrested on the restraint. So I was allowed £250 a week out of that to live off. Okay. It doesn't pay my bills anyway. Yeah. So all of this has gone on, and they got me to the end of the breaking point after everything, which was when I left the English Defence League, which I held my hands up. I said, look, I'd done a deal where they'll leave my wife because they had my wife. They used my wife. They had me. I pleaded guilty to a mortgage trial. Yeah. Not my mortgage. I had 7 mortgages between me and my wife. I had to plead guilty to my brother-in-law who lied on a self-certification mortgage form. No mortgage company lost any money. No bank lost any money. All they had after a 4-year or 3-year investigation, they dropped money laundering. I got not guilty on tax evasion. All they whittled it down to, they had nothing.
Yeah, but why would you plead guilty?
Because if I didn't, my wife was going to be put on trial for tax.
Okay.
My wife's the mother of my children. Anyone can try. You try and find a picture of my wife, you won't be able to do it. Yeah? No one knows who she is. I've managed that difficultly
that must have been very
to live 2 separate lives, completely separate lives. My wife's never been to an English Defence League demonstration. She's never had no involvement in it, no meetings.
But obviously, I'm going to ask this question, what does she think?
What does she think? She hates it.
All this,
she hates it. She's absolutely hates it. I was supposed to be in Prague last week talking at a rally, and I couldn't do it because my wife's the boss. I think it's the only time that I sit and think Sharia wins because she wouldn't be saying nothing. But no, it's like she hates it. She hates the effect it's had. We have 3 young children. For her, it's a bit. I guess it's a bit of an embarrassment when the police have come to our house, they've raided our house, all on trumped up charges, but the knock-on effect that is she's just a mother of my 3 kids, she's just a normal girl. She doesn't, this isn't her political.
So you weren't doing this
when we met, no, you know what I mean?
So, do you think she'll ever persuade you to leave, or, there must have come a point, is she, sorry to be personal.
No, it's okay.
Has she ever said, right, it's me, or?
Oh, loads of times.
Yeah, but how do you talk around that? So I know I can talk my way.
Don't make me make the choice. Don't make me make the choice, babe, because you might not be it. No, the way for me, I've always convinced myself, that this isn't about my kids.
Yeah.
It's not about my wife. Yeah. I truthfully believe, wholeheartedly believe, that if we don't tackle this, then my children and their children are going to be born into mayhem. Yeah? And that if we don't do the service now, if there's going to be someone that needs to tackle this, if it's going to be a generation that needs to tackle it, that we need to stand up and change these, I want it to be mine. I don't want it to be my kids. And I always think, which I say, well, it's not just, I say it to my wife, it's not just about our kids here. Yeah? I see this as a problem for the whole generation of every kid. And I look at what we've done previously, or English men have done previously, or British men have done before us, and they give everything in order to hand down safe and prosperous country and a decent, prosperous Britain for their children. And I think we're doing them a disservice. I don't think we're doing enough. I look at myself even now and I don't think I'm doing enough. And I think that every man should be asking themselves whether they're doing enough.
But again, how would you solve that? Because from what you said, forgive me if I've misinterpreted, that Islam is fundamentally incompatible with Western culture.
I believe Sharia is incompatible with Western culture.
Okay, so
wholeheartedly, Sharia
is.
I believe that what we need to do is ban Sharia. Mm-hmm. Yeah? Sharia courts should be banned. Anything that's promoting, like we see even now, I just saw yesterday the government are giving money to this school scheme which is up in the northwest, who have churned out great results. Yeah? But they encourage complete non-integration. That's not the society and country we should be promoting. It's not where the money should be going. We should be making it very, very difficult. If you wish to enforce political Islam in any sort of way in this country, you should be having a hard job trying to do so. They're not having a hard job. They're actually getting funding of taxpayers, government. That Islamic centre down there, Luton Islamic Centre, I think they got £144,000 off our council. Yeah? That is a centre of hate.
Would there be like some sort of government department that would just keep an eye on this sort of stuff to make sure it wasn't happening?
They're supposed to be, isn't they? They just don't do it. There's hundreds of departments supposed to be doing things that they aren't doing.
But I'll ask you this question.
The laws are already there, they just need to be enforced.
Yeah.
Female genital mutilation has been illegal in this country for 30 years.
Yeah.
No one's been prosecuted. Thousands of girls every year having their clits cut off in this country.
But
no one's been prosecuted.
It's the political world. There surely must be a judge somewhere who's just going to say, right, or the CPS.
No, the CPS are in bed with them.
Yeah.
The CPS are actually part of the problem. They're supposed to be independent, they're not. I've witnessed that myself with what's gone on with me. There's been cases where there's been zero evidence. If you watched my Oxford speech, did you see my charity walk?
When you walk through...
when I walked and I'm arrested. We're assaulted, we're arrested.
3 people and stuff like that.
Yeah, and we're arrested. There's no evidence that we've done any crime. In fact, the evidence points completely contrary to that. Yeah. So fair enough, if the police want to arrest us under political motivations, that then goes to an independent Crown Prosecution Service who are supposed to review the evidence and see if there's any possibility of... Is it in the public interest? Is there a possibility of conviction? Yeah? Well, that CPS charged me. I went to court 3 times. All so that they could hold bail conditions on me, preventing my political movement. Yeah. Now, when it gets to court and it gets before a judge, the judge reviews the evidence. This has happened 3, 4, 5 times with me. The judge reviews the evidence and says, what are we doing here? Yeah. Yeah? But by that time, they've controlled you for 9 months. Yeah. Yeah. So the CPS are in bed. They're politically motivated. In fact, if you start really looking into who's running many of the CPS, we see Muslims at the head of it.
But, so you say, because, obviously Muslims are a certain percentage of the UK population, but, and I know you just said that Muslims kind of do have a lot of influence with CPS, but obviously there's going to be a lot of sort of, what better term, British people that are non-religious in this. So to change all this, you're going to have a complete rethink throughout society.
Well, yeah, you do, yeah. To change this, what you need to have is you need to have an educated society that are educated on the truth about Islam.
But who decides that truth?
Well, the truth, the books decide it.
Yeah.
The Quran, the Hadiths, the biography of Muhammad, that is the truth about Islam.
So you would make people, perhaps in some theoretical classroom, you would make people study...
Well, for example, my local MP, Gavin Sukkar, I haven't seen him. He spoke a lot about me, in fact, over the last 5 years. He's called me ignorant of one thing. Now, I'd never bumped into him, and just a matter of weeks ago, I bumped into him in a chicken shop in Luton. Oh, yeah? I said, Gavin, can I have a word with you?
Yeah. Oh, yes, you just collared him.
Can we just have a chat? Because I tried to meet him a couple of times. He actually agreed to meet me, but then he cancelled that meeting because his office was attacked. Yeah. This was an incident where his office was attacked and EDL was sprayed on the front of the office. Now, that was a week before our meeting. He cancelled my meeting because of that. What it turned out is the police made arrests for all these attacks, and it was Muslims that were attacking cars and houses. They were spraying EDL. Yeah. But anyway, I met Gavin and I said, Gavin, you held a Celebrate Mohammed Day in the House of Commons, I believe. You were the main man in this. And he's like, yeah. I said, tell me what you know about Mohammed. And he just went, well, I know Muslims respect him. I said, okay, tell me about him. Tell me about this man, Mohammed. Tell me anything about his life. And he just looked blank.
Yeah, he did.
I said, you don't know anything about a man that you're holding a day to celebrate his life. Do you want me to talk to you a few things about him? And I said, because I'll tell you the factual truth about him, which is backed up. Muslims accept this truth. I said, you're celebrating a man who beheaded 600 people. Do you think that should be celebrated? And he's just like, I said, what about torturing a man for his gold, Kanana, as he did? What about taking a woman called Sophia and raping her? And I went through all of these things, and he's just sat there. I said, you know nothing about Muhammad. I said, have you read the Quran, Gavin? And he said, no. And I said, you stand on TV and call me ignorant. I said, is that... In this conversation, Gavin, you're the ignorant one.
Do you think there's like a very much just what's the word?
There's a blind
instinctive kickback. You know,
there's a blindness that people think we're all the same. Yeah. Oh, Islam must be like Christianity. It must be like Sikhism. It must be like Judaism. No, it's not. No, it's very, very different. Yeah? And I think that people like Gavin Suka, who are in charge of my town in the House of Commons, should understand that. Yeah. If they're going to be celebrating something, they need to know what they're celebrating. And yes, Muslims hold him sacredly, but no, I don't think that morally we should be holding up this man as a moral objective to celebrate when he has committed atrocities. On anything. If he was around today, he'd be a war criminal. He'd be in jail. He'd be done for incitement.
Well, you could make the same argument about Julius Caesar.
Could you do it about Jesus?
No, you couldn't.
Well, there you go.
Yeah.
That's the point I'm making. Julius Caesar is not who 4 million people in Britain believe we need to emulate. No, Julius Caesar is not our moral guidance on many things. Muhammad is the moral guidance, the ethical guidance. He is the perfect.
But there's absolutely, you can't make religion a thought crime, and if you do,
you don't need to make it a thought crime.
How do you change the beliefs of people when, in your point of view,
well,
the leader of the religion is fundamentally wrong?
Yeah, well, if you want to change the beliefs,
the followers from the leader.
Well, because we have to give freedom of religion, which they don't have. You've seen any Muslim in this country that's converted to Christianity and become an apostate is violently targeted.
Well, that's ridiculous. I know no one agrees with that. But
it's happening.
I know it's happening.
And no one's helping them. There aren't charities set up helping Muslims leave Islam, which there should be.
There should be. You know, no one disputes that at all. But because belief is belief, isn't it? It's very difficult to get people off any sort of belief.
But when you say belief, fundamentally, most Muslims, like I sit with Muslims, a lad I went to school with, I sat down next to him in court, and he said, I don't think this is a Muslim lad. I don't think it's as bad as what you say. I said, you don't know though, do you? That's the truth. You don't know, do you? And he's like, I said, what about, and I asked him a few questions about his own religion. And what I've been surprised with and found is that a lot of Muslims don't know too much about their own religion. Yeah. That's what I found. So the fundamentalists know everything. The ones who are given the voice boxes and the platforms are very versed in the Quran and they're scholars on the subject. But the majority of people who you would say, what we shouldn't judge Islam on is the fact that, my taxi driver was a nice guy. The bloke who served me a kebab, he's a lovely guy. Yeah. The bloke who runs my paper shop is a great guy. Well, that doesn't mean Islam's good for Britain.
So we should judge it on the nut jobs then?
No, we should judge it on scripture and evidence.
But if these people aren't following scripture, like they're just not ignorant of it, then they're not going to be a problem, are they?
Well, they're not. No. The majority of Muslims are not a problem.
Yeah,
no.
So shouldn't it be better if we just target the radicals and just, I don't know what, because if I knew that I would be solving it myself. But
it's for a lot more. It's for people who are educated a lot more better than me to be solving it, but they're not. Yeah. They're simply not.
Yeah, it's a very big problem. So anyway, you're in the EDL, just to kind of change tack a sec.
Yep.
And you attract some rather interesting people, like, because from my point of view, you're anti-fundamentalist religion more than you don't strike me as a far right sort of Nazi, for want of a better word. But the EDL did attract that sort of element.
Yeah, we did. Yeah.
And could you just talk about that? How you felt when that happened?
From day one in this town, how I've been brought up is the men I was brought up respecting looking up to were black men on our football scene. Luton is a town that is a sort of a great example of how multiculturalism does work, but also of how religion doesn't. Because so that's how I've been brought up. I haven't been brought up in a white community or a completely white community. My best friends from day one. Yeah, that's all I've known. Yeah? So when we start the English Defence League, it's built on that guidance. Yeah? And on the first demonstrations, we have signs saying "National Front, go to hell." And the first demonstration, I remember sitting down in a pub, and it's about 200-300 Luton lads in the pub, and in Luton, this is for the UPL before the EDL. And I sat down next to a lad, and he's a big white lad, and I noticed that he's not from Luton. We all know each other. He's not there. So I sat down, "All right, mate, where are you from?" He said, "I'm from Barnet." And he goes, "Don't worry, mate, 20 National Fronts got off the train station." So I said, "Yeah, good." I said, "You see when they get here, bruv?" I said, "They're fucked. I mean, they're getting it." I said, "Look around, this is our town. Yeah? And in our town, we don't stand for that. And it's simple, we never have. And so we've carried that through, and it's got me in a lot of problems. From burning the SWAS flag. In the early days, what we did is to send a message out, because from our point of view, we're leaving Luton as a bunch of normal lads.
When you say SWAS flag, you mean swastika flag?
Swastika flag, yeah. Yeah, so we're leaving Luton as a bunch of normal lads. Yeah? When I say normal lads, some people would say some are hooligans, some are...
Regular men.
Yeah, you're regular men, yeah. We're leaving at Luton and we're going up to Birmingham. And when we turn up to Birmingham, and there's a few people turning up with Dr. Martens bomber jackets, no one walks around here like that. Yeah.
I didn't know people still walk around.
No, they do, yeah. And the same as, and the girl had a SWAS thing on her thing, and we had an incident straight away where, as we're getting on this buses, this geezer in a green bomber jacket's give a Hitler salute, a Nazi salute. And it's the first time I've probably ever seen a Nazi salute, yeah, other than in a book or on a film, and I've seen this Nazi salute, and no one ever wants to talk about these stories, but straight away, him and his mates got filled in. Yeah. They automatically got filled in. Yeah. The bus was stopped and they were kicked off. Now, from that early days, from that early on stage, we had that stance against the real far right. We were classed as far right, but we weren't. And then that grew, and what the EDL did was it reignited along the whole spectrum. So we took to the streets, lots of normal people took to the streets, but it also gave birth again to groups who, like I watched most recently, down in Dover, there was a National Front march. There's 300 people on it. I don't think that's been seen for years.
Yeah, so...
Those sort of groups would get 20 people.
You kind of sprinkled water on the...
On everything. On everything. Yeah. And for myself, I've watched some kids, like when I left the EDL, there was one young lad called Josh, he's from the Northwest. Good kid, when I met him, 17 years old. I then looking through and seeing pictures of him giving Hitler salutes with a group called the Northwest Infidels. Now, he's gone from the EDL, and when the EDL has been left with no leadership, really, he's been susceptible to be radicalised.
Did you not think that why maybe some of the criticism of the EDL that people saw that perhaps could happen?
No, I don't think so, because what they did is they made our job even harder. I used to say to the police, "Do you want a bunch of normal people walking down the street, or do you want far right lunatics?" Because each time you come out, the press come out, or any of you come out saying the English Defence League's far right, the English Defence League's this, you're inviting those people to come along. We're trying to stop them coming along, and you're telling them basically in a big advert in your paper, this is where you're wanted. Yeah? I said, and we're fighting that from within. But we got to a point where those groups knew they weren't welcome, and in fact, go online yourself.
Yeah, you get.
Look it up. They hate me. I'm a race traitor. I'm a Zionist. I'm this. I'm that. I work for Israel. All these different things. And I see that. I like that fact because it means I'm doing something right. You know what I mean?
Yeah, they really don't like it. But you know, this isn't a gotcha question. But you were a member of the BNP.
I was, yeah.
So
gotcha.
Yeah.
In 2004, when I was 21, 21. We had all these problems going on in the town, as I've spoke about. We've seen the Magnificent 19 posters across the town. We've had people I've known were murdered by Muslim gangs. We've had prostitution, heroin rackets. The town's just exploded with violence over the years, It's completely changing. And then I'm looking, after the Beslan massacre I'm looking for people online because I'm frustrated as a young kid. I'm searching, and the only people talking about this were the BNP. And they were in Luton. I think someone approached us at the football, an older lad who there was a BNP organiser in the area called Farley Hill, and because we were a young group on the town, we were a group of lads. We were organised through football. We'd go to football on Saturdays. We'd have lads in each area of the town. We'd have lads all spread across the town. So anyone wanted to make an inroad into Luton would be through the football scene. Yeah. So they asked us for a meeting. We spoke to them about these issues. When I looked at they had a 10-point plan on a leaflet. You have to be a bit of an idiot not to agree with the 10 points. Like British old pensioners should have warmth, should have all the things to warm you. All these sort of things. Yeah. I didn't know anything really then about Nick Griffin, about the BNP. I didn't know he was a Holocaust denier. I didn't know about his links with the Ku Klux Klan. I didn't even know he was the ex-leader of National Front. I didn't know anything about him. Yeah. I just had this group. They set up a meeting. We went to the meeting. Again, even after listening in the meeting, I thought, you can't argue with anything he's saying. We're facing these problems in this town. Organised another meeting. And the second meeting, we said, we'll bring the lads. Went along with the lads, and we got to the door, and he said, he can't come in, he can't come in, he can't come in. This is right. I said, what? The black people can come in. Now to us, now BNP back then, now they were forced by the court, I think, to let non-white people join. Yeah. But back then, 2004, you could, which for me, I was like, what? Yeah. You can't join if you're black. You can join the British Armed Forces and go die on the front line, but you can't join your British National Party if you're not white. Yeah. And for me, and we said they didn't have the meeting. And after that, I think actually Searchlight documented when the MIGs, which was Luton's football hooligans, when the MIGs fell out with the BNP in Luton. And it was over that.
Why are they called the MIGs?
The Luton's football hooligan team was called the MIGs. It's the men in gear.
Oh, okay.
It comes down to designer clothing and sort of like a culture. Yeah.
Oh, sorry,
that goes back to the 80s, before I was born.
So, what do you like at the moment, like one of the big issues, and sorry to date us where we are, is, the sort of refugee migrant crisis from Syria, coming into Europe. From
Syria?
Yeah. Syria, Iraq, Afghanistan, and the Middle East, we'll just say. Have you any thoughts on
Africa? Yeah, we're being invaded.
Yeah. What's consciously invaded, or just?
This isn't a fluke. This is orchestrated and organised.
By whom? Well, I don't know if you got.
It's orchestrated, it's organised. It's not like just all of a sudden in the last 18 months, the whole of the Middle East has started flooding to Europe.
But there has been the refugee camps have lost funding. Correct me if I'm getting a bit this wrong. And obviously, everyone's legged from Syria for this.
So, mate, I watched a Panorama documentary the other week. They couldn't find a genuine refugee. That's Panorama. Yeah. Now, this is a BBC left-wing
but I've always said this
apologist organisation.
If you were put yourself in a position, say we're both Syrians.
No, I don't blame them.
Yeah, I would.
I don't blame them.
I would go straight to Europe.
Look, when I was 11 years old, I had an Albanian kid. Maybe I was 10. There was an Albanian kid called Amir. He was the first refugee to come from the Albanian conflict. He was welcomed. He was photographed, front page of the local newspaper. He come and lived in my road with his sister and his mum. Yeah? He's a great kid. Right? He's grown into, he's worked, he's got a great education, he's got a great career, a great job. He's a success story of what Britain can give people, yeah? That is a million miles different. He come with his mum from a real refugee camp, yeah? He didn't come with 50 men, yeah? All charging through, throwing rocks and bricks at police who don't want to let him do things. This whole thing that's happening now is completely different. We shouldn't even be looking at it in the same people keep trying to put it in the kind of concept of the World War. Look, the refugees in the World War went home when the war was over.
Well, there was about 10 million who were legging it from the Russians as well.
Yeah.
So there are some parallels.
Yeah. Well, it's not parallels because look, the rule of being a refugee is you're fleeing for your life. Well, when they get to Turkey, they're no longer fleeing for their life.
No, I agree.
They come through 16 countries, and
there's economic reasons, obviously.
There's economic reasons, which I don't blame them either. Yeah. I blame Angela Merkel.
Yeah.
In fact, Angela Merkel opening up the gates and telling them they can come. What she's doing is encouraging these people to risk their lives, die at sea, die on dinghies, die on boats, starve, freeze, to come to a country there where quite now I think they're turning some back.
Yeah, they're going to close the borders.
Well, that's her fault because she has fraudulently told them. Come here. And I think for that 10 minutes of feel-good factor for every lefty that wants to stand there and say we should let them all in, and well, you're not going to pay to let them in. You're not going to take a drop in your wages. You're not actually going to give a free room in your house. So you want to let them in, you want to house them all, but you want everyone else to pay for it. And it's like we have enough problems of our own. I believe I read recently in Sandwell, the local politician come out and said, actually, we've got 2,000 people on a housing list. We've got our own homeless people. We can't then just take people from another country and just put them in ours. And it's like when I looked at the poverty rules, and when you're looking at this, because we should stop kidding ourselves that letting in 1 million or 2 million or 3 million is going to solve any of the problems in the Middle East. It's not. We shouldn't be causing the destruction of our community, our cohesion, our economy, and our entire country for a feel-good factor.
So what do we do? Build a giant fence?
No, I think that we should be protecting them in their own country. I think there should be buffer zones that are protected by NATO. We have NATO for a reason. These people need to have safety and security. There should be somewhere they can flee to, but it should be set up, funded. We should be leading the way in the world.
We have to sort out Syria.
In doing this.
Yeah, that would be...
Well, how do you sort out Syria? Because I don't think Assad should be forcefully removed. Myself.
I think it'd be very difficult to get rid of Assad.
He's
got some staying power.
Listen, if we look at what happened when we've removed Saddam Hussein, it wasn't good. Look at what happened when we removed Gaddafi, it wasn't good. Why are we trying to destabilise another country? We, from the start of this conflict, have sided and supported the bad guys. We've funded the bad guys. We've actually funded the people who are trying to kill our troops in Afghanistan and Iraq. And now,
yeah, it's pretty ridiculous.
When it suits our foreign policy, which, to be honest, I say to myself, look, I agree. I'm disgusted with our foreign policy. We are robbing countries, and our political leaders are making decisions, and then they're leaving us to live with them every time. And it's us that, when you've got a whole angry community here that are angry because their brothers and cousins are being bombed and murdered.
But do you not think it's pockets? Like, you know, Newton's a pocket, Rotherham's a pocket, Rochdale, towns like this. Like, I live in South London, and you know, that might sound like, you know, typical lefty. The Muslims around my area seem very normal.
What's the percentage?
God, yeah, probably about 5%, 6% maybe. Most.
25%.
Yeah, so that's obviously going to have a massive effect on the community. Like.
Well, no, what it's going to do is it's going to be that when there was 5% here, they probably won't cause that much problem either.
I heard an interesting argument.
And I'll tell you fundamentally why there's a problem in my town.
Yeah.
They come from Kashmir. You know, they're uneducated. Okay, like America doesn't seem to have as bad problems with the Muslim immigration that we've had, because they have a system where they only let in educated, financially secured Muslims.
Yeah.
We don't. We've had a very uneducated, tribalistic mindset coming over from
was that to work
Pakistan.
Like Vauxhall and places like that?
They say it was, but not many of them are working.
But they were.
The first generation, yeah.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Like,
the first generation didn't cause the problems that they cause now.
Why do you think this is the second? You know, in your view, this is the second generation, third generation thing rather than the first?
Again, it's orchestrated and organised. Saudi Arabia, Qatar, these countries are polluting the minds. Yeah. They're dictating. They're funding.
So you're not a big fan of Al Jazeera?
No, Al Jazeera is just a puppet mouth for their regimes.
So what can we in the West, could we do about this? Because obviously, you know, there's this two countries spewing out, you know, propaganda,
hatred.
Yeah. So yeah.
Pollute.
What would you do if you were in charge?
I wouldn't bend over and kiss their asses every moment they get.
But what would you do?
What I'd do, I'd stop all foreign Saudi money coming into this country. Yeah. Me personally, I would put them on a list in the similar fashion to which we were trying to do to Putin recently. Economic fucking sanctions. Yeah, what we've done with them. That's what needs to happen to Saudi Arabia. You're not bringing your money into our country. Although they own 48% of our stock market, I believe. They own every port in this country. That's why we're bending over to them. That's why our government are selling their soul for Arab money. They're selling our souls at the same time. They're selling our kids' futures at the same time. I think that I'd make it illegal. I'd outlaw Sharia law. I'd end Muslim immigration to this country until we get to a point. I'd have a similar point system and scores similar to Australia. A real immigration system where people come to this country to benefit. And
one thing about one thing I like about emigrating to Australia is if you say you're a carpenter, they go, right, you've got to go live somewhere miles away from anywhere, so everyone can't congregate in one city.
Well, it's like look, I look at Muslims in Biggleswade, for example, and I speak to lads in Biggleswade. It's just a town 20-30 minutes from here, and they come in small numbers, and there's no mosque, and they're integrated quite well, and they're normal. Yeah? When they haven't got the influence of people telling them, the Saudi, the Wahhabis, the Imams, there doesn't seem to be the problem. So when we say about a mosque, people act like it's a good thing. It's like, no, actually, they flock to it. Right? It causes a ghettoised community where all of them are flocking and living. If we didn't have 20, 30 mosques in this town, they might have spread out in the early years.
So, you know, like Saudi propaganda, Gulf state propaganda centres.
Yeah, they are, yeah.
So what's next?
Command and control centres.
So command and control. So that's what you see. You've used a couple of times during into military terms. Like, do you think there is like one day we're going to wake up and we're all going to be fighting each other?
Every single war that's been launched in the Islamic world is launched from the mosque. Let's not pretend. Every riot there is on a Friday, every time there's an uprising in the Islamic country, it comes after Friday prayers.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah. If you want to listen to what the Turkish Prime Minister said, he said the dome of the mosque is our helmet, the thing is our minaret. They bring it into a military fashion.
But are you I'm not
on about. And again, I'm not on about Ahmadiyya mosques. I'm not really on about Sufi mosques. I'm on about Salafist, Wahhabist, Deobandi, the one that they were wanting to build as a mega mosque in London.
So I guess the best way, from that point of view, is to actually, to cut off the fun is we'd have to like kind of detach ourselves somehow from the Gulf states, which would mean getting off oil, so stuff like that. But so I'm babbling now.
No, we need to detach ourselves anyway from them. Yeah. Look at the state of how have they're sitting on the Human Rights Council, isn't it?
Yeah, so,
what?
Yeah.
It's mad, isn't it? You couldn't make it up. You could not make it up if you tried.
Do you think the left wing in the country have a problem actually, acknowledging the issue, that there is even an issue?
They have a huge problem. What you have is a far left minority within the left wing who wish to saddle up next to Islam because they wish to overthrow rule of law. They hate the police. They hate democracy. They like Marxism, communism, and they're siding with them simply. It's like a bit of a mutual agreement just for that reason. But really, they hate them because they hate religion as well. But the left in this country, which is why so many of the left are now becoming the right. They're asleep to it. They're not just asleep to it, but very naive to it, and many of them are not living in and amongst it. So they don't get it either. You know what I mean? And it's very easy when you're to detach yourself from something to think in a different way. I've seen it myself. They just don't get it. Many of them don't get it. I ask a lot of them. I was just saying earlier. I asked Nick Lowles. Like, he's got kids. Leader of Hope, mate. What's the ethnic diversity of your kids' school? I just can tell by the look on his face. I don't know how it sounds. So it's all right for you, but it's not all right for.
So you think like there's a certain.
It's not right for you, but it's all right for us.
Middle class intelligentsia, for want of a better phrase, that are kind of retreating behind like.
Send your kid to a school that's got 90% Muslims in. Let your kid be the victim. Let your kid be bullied just because he's English in a town like Luton. Let that happen to your kid. No, you won't, will you? And then you'd stick your head down your nose at us because we're saying this is happening to our kids. Where what we had in the early days of immigration, probably in the 80s or 60s, 70s, when you had black people coming in, there was racism. They were attacked. When my mum come here, no blacks, no dogs, no Irish. My mum was an Irish immigrant. What we did is we set up organisations, committees, groups, everything. We made it a whole massive national target to stop this racism. Yeah. Well, that's reversed now. Now in towns like Luton, it's the white English kid, or the non-Muslim kid that's being victimised, targeted. When his parents are going to the school, it's such a taboo subject, just like Rotherham. That Rotherham mindset that was in it wasn't just in one group, it was in social services, council, police. That mindset of political correctness and this taboo that, because they're Muslims, that's in everything. That's in policing, that's in implementing the law equally across the communities. That's in when I speak to parents who go into the schools and the school don't want to know because they don't know how to deal with it. What we've got, like all these kids picking on this kid because he's not a Muslim. How do we deal with that? Well, you don't, because 90% of your school's Muslim, so you let the kid keep on getting picked on. When the kid reacts, you expel him for racism.
So you think we have to tackle it now, or we're going to just be going, because if white British or black British or Sikh or Hindu take their kids out of schools that are predominantly Muslim, which no doubt they probably are already.
Well, they are.
We're just going to create more and more insular communities.
We're already heading that. We've already got that, and it's only going to get worse. It's only going to get worse, and that's not.
So this is a very happy vision.
No, it's not, is it? It's depressing, isn't it? But at the same time, that's reality. The reality is, are we in a better place now than we were 5 years ago? The government has set up some 5-year scheme. Yeah, well, David Cameron.
Are we in a worse place?
Yeah,
I
much
mean,
worse.
Like, like if you go back to 2005,
Mate,
Muslim extremists were bombing tubes.
Mate, if the Muslim extremists hadn't been stopped by the police, they'd have bombed something every month last year. Yeah? Just because they didn't get away with it, don't mean they're not trying it. Are we in a worse place? Are we?
Like the IRA, like they were bombing every week.
Yeah. Are we?
I mean, what?
When you say are we in a worse place?
Yes.
2,000 British Muslims went last year to join ISIS. Yeah. 2,000. 2,000.
That's not that many, really.
That's not that many. That's how many have gone to. That's kids at my age. There's probably 20 that have gone from this town. Yeah, I know some of them. Right? So when you say that's not that many,
it isn't that many, but it is a crazy thought that people have actually gone.
They haven't gone on holiday to ISIS. They've gone to chop people's heads off, rape, pillage, and murder, and enforce Islam. Now, if 2,000 have actually taken that step to go and die, which is the inevitable outcome, how many are here?
But the counter argument is, I bet quite a few of them get there and think, oh my, what am I doing here? And
well, no, because when I hear that, it's like, oh, he was tricked into.
No, I don't mean they're tricked. I think they go with pure. I want to enforce Islam. I'm going to a caliphate, and it's going to be heaven on earth. And they get there, and they realise that they've been sold a bit of a lie.
Yeah, I think I've heard things say like as I said, I've heard people say, oh, they were tricked into. He's been tricked into going, and we're talking about these people, even these young girls from London. We're talking about them like they're victims. They're not the victims.
No, I don't see them as victims.
They're not the victims, and they've been tricked. You get tricked into losing a few money. You don't get tricked into joining a terrorist group in the Middle East that the whole world knows are setting fire to people, burning them, and pillaging and murdering. No, you don't get tricked into that. Yeah? That's a process. Yeah. And most of these, you'll find there's a sympathy with them.
What would you do with the people who are trying to come back?
No, they wouldn't be coming back, mate. They just would not be coming back. They'd be getting slotted by the SAS if I had my way.
Yeah, but that's.
Because these people, I'll tell you why, because I was due to be talking recently at an event in London, and I had the Chief Inspector of Bedfordshire Police come to see me, and he said, please don't go, yeah? We're asking you, don't go, yeah? And I said, why not? He said, because a member of ISIS in Syria had put out the coordinates of where I was going to be on Friday. They didn't accept the coordinates of where I was going to be. Yeah. And he said, 400 of them will come back, yeah? I didn't let them back. So now, officer, you want me to relay my freedoms because you've let 400 ISIS terrorists back into our country?
I mean,
from your point so from my point of view, they would not be coming back. Yeah. None of them would be coming back. And it's like, if I am killed, then the blood should be on our government's hands. It should be on all these donuts that are sitting there saying, why don't we put them through radicalisation programmes? You've been putting them through re-radicalisation programmes. You've got re-radicalisation programmes in your prisons that are not working. You've been doing this. Your prevent scheme of £360 million that you give to them actually created more problems.
But, just on a personal level, like when you wake up in the morning, because obviously what you just said, there was a good chance someone is one day just going to come from blindside and attack you.
They have attacked me loads of times.
I mean, like attack you. Fine.
Well, yeah.
Do you? How do you wake up? Like, what kind of mental state must you be in every day? Or have you got so much conviction that what you're doing is right and has to be done that you're just going to keep plowing forward?
I sort of like look. That's the problem that I had to get around my head in those years of the first 2-3 years of the EDL, where at times I was off my head. And how I dealt with it wasn't. And now I'm sort of like, I said, you have 3 stages: disbelief, disappointment, acceptance. I'm in the acceptance stage. I accept the reality. So there's not much. I'm not going to change my life now. I started wearing a bulletproof vest around here. I did. And then I thought, you know what? Like, if someone wants to kill me, they'll kill me. That's the reality of it. What I do bear a grievance with is the fact that anyone that has physically assaulted me already has never been has not been brought to book by the police, bearing in chance one exception. So I've been punched on the national TV through a car window by one of the country's most radical Muslims. He was never arrested or had his collar felt. I've been beaten up outside a nightclub where it's on CCTV by a group of Muslims. Not one of them has been arrested. Every time I've had threats. I just read yesterday someone's been prosecuted for threatening to behead a UKIP councillor. Well, I've had threats every day. I have threats to kill my kids all the time. I've given the police hundreds, not once. So that I bear a sort of like bitterness with it police that they haven't put steps in place to protect me, to offer my family, at least, if not me, then my wife, my children, they're innocent in this. My mum's innocent in this. Her house has been targeted. All these different things. The police have never done anything bad.
So it's very brave of you to stay in Luton then. You know, if you, I'm assuming you still live in Luton, because Luton, like you said, has got a high Muslim population who, a significant minority of that must be like, oh, you know.
Kill him.
Yeah.
That's the reality. Kev, they went to Kev Carroll's with a shotgun. They tried to get Kev Carroll, and it's the same. The police offered us then relocation, witness protection. This was in the first 12 months, 18 months of the EDL. New identities, everything like that. But it's sort of like, well, why? Well, why shouldn't I? If I want to walk down that town centre now, and go for something to eat, wherever I want to eat, then why shouldn't I? What? Because I dare to say that something's wrong, and morally, like if I didn't have the conviction that I'm right, you know what I mean? I keep saying getting called far right, so I'm not far right. I'm just right.
What are your political views?
Yeah, politically they're not right wing.
I mean, like, if you just take all the, you know, Islamic factor out of it, how would you describe yourself?
Well, I had some left-wing fella ask me this. He started asking me my views. He started asking me my views on most things. I'm liberal in many senses. Okay, yeah. Like when it comes to, probably not when I was younger. When it comes to gay people's rights, I'd fight for a gay man's rights. Yeah, so on all of these issues, as I've grown up, I said, what? I said to Kev, when people say I'm far right, Kev's like, no, we're right wing. I said, well, what makes me right wing then, Kev? Am I just right wing just because I don't like Islam? Does that make me right wing because I don't like a fascist ideology? If I didn't like Scientology, does that make me right wing?
Probably not.
No, it's an ideology.
It doesn't make you John Travolta's friend either.
No. But so I said, like, most of my views, they're very liberal. Many of them would be left wing.
Final question: are you religious?
No.
Have you ever been?
No, I was brought up as a Catholic. My mother is still a devout Catholic. When I say are you religious, is for me.
Do you have faith?
I have faith. I don't have any faith in the church, in any of the church. Yeah. I feel disgusted with the Catholic Church, if I'm honest. So, for me, the whole Catholic thing, I was brought up as a Catholic. My mum still says her prayers every night. She's very devout, religious. It's not for me, with the Catholic Church. And I remember, I think it was in probably 2009, 10. I asked the Deacon Jerry, just at the Catholic Church around the corner. I said, like, look, the more I'm looking into this Islam, the more I'm getting concerned and worried. Yeah? And this was when it was all just starting. I was after his advice, really. And he said the Lord's Prayer. And he got to the point where, forgive our trespasses and we forgive those who trespass against us. So I said, your advice about Islam worldwide, that's murdering Christians in every Middle East, is to forgive them.
I guess that's what it was.
Yeah, that's what I want. I said, forgive them. And what about once we've all forgiven them and we're all dead? And all the Christians have gone out in the Middle East, which they will be. What then? And it's just like, I said, that is weak. And for me, that's pathetic. So, no. And I look sometimes, to be honest, I had a vicar come down to see me from the north, from Yorkshire. And it was the first time I felt any closeness in my life to any sort of religious thing when I sat and spoke with him.
Yeah. The last thing we really probably need is a religious war.
Well, no, I believe all schools should be secular.
Yeah.
I don't like the fact that schools are pushing religion. I don't like any of that. I don't think that a child should be brought to a certain age before he should be involved in religion.
Yeah.
That's my view.
And
you know what I mean?
baptism. When you're 18, then you choose your own religion.
Well,
maybe not 18, but...
No, but then at the same time, I don't want to get into that argument it gets brought down this argument that when I say about religious institutions in universities, we shouldn't have Islamic institutions in universities, because this is 80% of the ISIS supporters in Germany are ex-university grads. Michael Adebolajo, the Stockholm bomber, they've all been radicalised in our universities, which are supposed to be a safe place of education.
But it's a classic thing though, someone goes to university at 18, 21,
impressionable, vulnerable.
Exactly,
yeah, but then people say, but we shouldn't have Christians ones either. I think, well, why not? Because I don't see Christian ones doing it. I don't think we should get all religions. So I don't want to go down the staunch secularist atheist stance of, well, they're all bad. I said, because there's only one that's causing the right problem. If all of them were doing this, if Christianity was doing this, if Christianity was doing this worldwide and people were picking up the Bible and reading a chapter and chopping someone's head off, every single day, like it's happening, then I'd understand, but they're not. So even if I say I think schools should be secular, I'm not having a pop at Christian schools.
Yeah, you just
I just don't think we should have madrasas.
Yeah, but it's easier just to have no religion. Because, there are more.
Well, my child come home from school, my daughter come home from school when she was 7 and said, Daddy, do you know a mosque is an important place where people pray. And then I had a book on the side where I was researching, and it says it's Muhammad's biography. And then my daughter said, I'm Muhammad, peace be upon him. And I went, what did you just say? She said, you have to say peace be upon him. I said, who told you that?
Well, they said that in
Well, they said it at school. I said, you never have to say peace be upon him. So that's where I really bear a grudge.
Yeah.
That the national curriculum is sort of like pushing these views. My daughter does not know what the English Defence League is. I've never mentioned Islam to her. I've never mentioned Muslims to her. Right? She doesn't need any of that. She's a kid. Right? So if I'm not talking to her or educating her or about these beliefs, because I don't think that the children should be educated until a certain age, if I'm not doing it, then what are the school doing it for? And the school
should be the parents' choice, like what religion they're taught.
And the school aren't like, for example, in the school they're teaching that jihad means in a struggle. Now, there's two concepts to jihad, but first and foremost, jihad is a religious war. First and foremost. So, but they're rewriting what it means. So and I just think that when I had that from my daughter, it didn't sit well. I think you're telling me you have to say peace be upon him, the man that's done all these atrocities, and I know what he's done, and I know the man that he was, and he's morally bankrupt. And here I have
these people who are following it. Why do you think they convince themselves that what was?
Well, you can't ask questions, can you? If you follow it, you're not allowed to ask questions. You're not allowed to leave.
So you think
you take the Shahada in prison before you're told anything about Islam. You take the Shahada, which says the Shahada is where they say Muhammad was the only prophet, and I'm now a Muslim. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
And once you do that, you can't leave. Yeah. Right. So they do that before, and I've been through the prison system, and I spoke to all the converts through the cells when I'm down the block and I'm arguing with them. And what I find out with all of them is they know when I point out some of the negative things about Islam. The fact, for example, if you've converted, like this one lad called Hobbs, he's a Jamaican kid, he'd converted, and he's screaming Allahu Akbar at me every day, yeah. And then it's like, is your nan dead? Yeah. He's like, yeah. I said, well, is she burning in hell then, bruv? Is she burning in hell? Yeah. And he's like, what? Is she burning in hell? Your nan? No, she was a good woman. I said, well, you need to speak to your imam then, mate, because you're now Muslim. So you now believe, fundamentally, that every single non-Muslim is burning in eternal hellfire. That includes your nan, buddy. And he's like, no. I said, you need to... And I said, what about this? And when I'm questioning and pushing on certain beliefs, hardcore fundamentalist beliefs in Islam, I find that he disagrees with them all. So I said, well, why are you shouting Allahu Akbar at me then, mate? Because you've converted to a gang rather than a religion. I don't believe for 1 minute you think Muhammad got on a unicorn and rode through the sky to heaven, like it says.
Well, we weren't there, but...
No, maybe he did. But I don't believe that for 1 minute. And I don't think most of you do, you know what I mean?
Yeah. Okay, brilliant.
Cool.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Cheers, man.
No, cheers, man. Thanks.
Did the cameras work?
Yeah.
No, can we just start that again?
Yeah.
Jeez, I'm soaking, sweating.
Right, turn that off.